who becomes really well known outside of Western Canada, even outside of Canada. But getting back to Auroraman's appearance, um, and the first thing one notices when looking at the books and then seeing the real life Jeff's pictures on Facebook is that Jeff the Auroraman looks much like the real life Jeff Burton in terms of his hairstyle, very prominent beard. Some of the artists make Jeff the Auroraman look a little stockier, perhaps a little bit shorter in height than the real life Jeff. But in most of the stories, Auroraman wears a makeshift, I don't know that you can even call it a costume. It's composed of a leather jacket, t-shirt, jeans, boots, and either round-shaped glasses or goggles. And his power source comes from a perfectly round meteor that came to Earth, but was lodged in a staff. And so I'd say the closest analogy to help those of you visualize this at home is Jeff Burton as Jack Knight, James Robinson's Starman from the 90s. So this is a hero who doesn't wear spandex. He's wearing his normal clothes, wearing glasses or goggles to protect his eyes because, wow, that meteorite sure emits a lot of energy. But it's a really cool look. It certainly eschews the trope of the character finding the source of their power and then developing this skin-tight spandex costume or putting on body armor. Jeff Burton as Auroraman is somebody who is ready to go out at a moment's notice, and he's not going to put on a costume. He's not even concealing his identity, and that's a really neat theme which seems to run throughout the history of Canadian comic books, where you have these heroes who may very well wear costumes or uniforms, and they may wear headgear or masks or cowls or something to protect all or part of their face, but they don't conceal their civilian identity. They may have a call sign or a superhero alias that people can use to refer to them by, but it's another Canadian thing that the hero still identifies themselves publicly. And again, going back to Leo Bechel's Johnny Canuck, I forgot to mention this in episode 111, but there were times in the Johnny Canuck comic where Johnny was referred to as Captain Canuck. And that was not just a call sign, it spoke to the fact that Johnny had the military rank of captain, but still people knew him by his civilian identity, Johnny Canuck. Tom Evans, in both his original and present-day incarnations, has never hid his civilian identity. He goes by the call sign of Captain Canuck, but when he's speaking with civilians or public officials, he always identifies himself as Captain Tom Evans. I want to say the modern-day incarnation of Northgard, Philip Wise, isn't concealing his identity either. So really neat here that we get this hero who is known in the community. He's not going out to try to hide the fact that he has found this object which grants him immense power. Now, another reason why I drew an analogy between Jeff Burton's Auroraman and James Robinson's Starman is because of the staff with the meteorite that Jeff Burton carries. And we see him using it to fly from one place to another. That meteorite emits a great amount of flame, which I'll get to soon, but creates it conjures up memories of Jack Knight using his cosmic staff to transport himself from one area to the next. Now, in terms of the meteorite, again, it's perfectly spherical. Depending on who the artist is, it actually looks more like a globe. You can actually see continents on it. And so perhaps this meteorite is telling something to Auroraman about the Earth, because certainly in a couple of panels I could see the continents of Europe and Africa. And while it's blue in color, it emits huge amounts of green flame. And on the Kickstarter page, I remember Mr. Burton comparing Auroraman's power to that of a Green Lantern Corps member's power. Although, Jeff, if you're listening to this, I'd like to say that this is actually more akin to the Golden Age Green Lantern, Alan Scott's Starheart, just with the fact that this meteor, to me, isn't emitting green light, it's emitting green flame. But certainly, I'll talk about it in a little bit, you certainly can draw a comparison between Auroraman's staff and the ability of a Green Lantern Corps ring. Something which even Alan Scott himself can do, but more on that later. So I think I should get into talking with you folks about what exactly you will find inside these two issues. So again, I'm not going full on spoilers, but just know that I will be giving brief synopses of the stories, so giving you a sense of what you will see. So there's a total of 8 stories within the 64-page spectacular. The first story, titled, let me just get to the right page, Heritage Moments First Flight, written by Jeff Burton and drawn by Justin Schauf, colors and letters by Donovan Yasiak. My apologies for any name butchery. This is a really neat story which just gives us a recap of Auroraman's origins. So the meteorite in the staff has fallen to Earth. Mr. Burton, being with a couple of his students, picks up the staff. And so this story is all about him learning how to use this staff. And there's a neat sort of greatest American hero vibe to it in that there's no instruction manual. So this is a story about a person discovering this great source of power and trying to figure out how to use it exactly. Some really nice artwork here, just showing how powerful the staff is and how much control Jeff needs, how much focus he must have in order to control this staff. And again, a neat connection with Green Lanterns. The word willpower isn't used here, but focus, I think, is very much akin to willpower. In order to exert your will, you do have to have a great amount of focus. I just like the sense of wonderment that comes out of this story, both from Jeff and his students. The next story is titled It Came from Dead Moose Lake. The art is by A. Shea Han, colors by Donovan Yasiak, letters by Taylor Esposito. I think most comic readers like a good zombie story, but so many zombie stories are about um, undead people. Well, what happens when you've got this new superhero who has to go up against an undead caribou? And I love that, thinking that the caribou is an iconic character that appears on Canadian quarters. So just really neat to see the hero jumping in to action and having to take on this great undead beast. We get to see a little bit more of what sort of power the staff gives. And I know that one of the knocks against Green Lantern at times, as well as other characters who have these incredibly powerful sources, is that it can be hard to show weaknesses or to make the stories compelling. But here, this undead creature provides a nice challenge for Jeff. And I like how we get the sense that maybe the story isn't done right there. There's another neat story. CBCbooks.ca presents just a one-page story, just really neat. Shows us what it's like from the perspective of a student of a superhero. I don't think that gets considered very often. Well, I mean, to begin with, I think there's a shortage of superheroes who are teachers in their civilian lives. But then on top of that, you don't really see stories in which the students talk about what it's like to have a teacher who is a superhero. And there's a really neat punchline at the end. The next story in this spectacular is called Bugs in the Park, with art by Elaine M. Hill. This one, the artwork is really neat. Again, this is a PDF I'm looking at, but it has the look of newsprint. So there's like a lot of that dotted style art, thanks to the printing process. So it gives it a neat retro vibe. And what I'll say about this story is it's kind of like a double whammy of 8-bit Galaga with an infestation of bugs. And really neat to see one of Auroraman's relatives show up in it here. And so again, what I really like in this story here is that we see that Auroraman is one of the people. He's not presenting himself as above them, just the way he walks amongst the crowd. I think there's something really Canadian about that too, that the hero doesn't put themselves on a pedestal. Okay, just flipping ahead to the next story. Something I did want to point out about Bugs in the Park is that we can actually see the degree to which Auroraman can create constructs with the staff. And that looks really neat. And I'd say with the visual effect here, it is more in line with Alan Scott's constructs, that there is sort of a flamed aspect to these constructs. The next story is from the adventures of Lil Auroraman and friends. And so this is very much in line with Tall Tales, stories of Lil Auric. And in fact, because Auroraman is a character that belongs to, or that is a member of the Canadian Comic Book Alliance, in this story we get to see an 11-year-old Auroraman teaming up with a pre-adolescent Oric of the Great White North in his lion beast mode